Hey guys, it's Brent Bowers. Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how to buy land and build a modular home on it. So why would you want to watch this video? I'm going to show you in this video all the mistakes I made and how you too can avoid them and be way more successful at it. All right, in this episode, I'm gonna give you all the steps I took to build this modular home, to get it off the ground, as well as to sell this thing for over a $90,000 profit. And I'm gonna walk you through all that and also show you all the painful mistakes I made and how to help you avoid those. All right, let's talk about the first thing. I had a friend bring me a piece of land for $30,000. This piece of land already had a septic system on it, well, and electric. Unfortunately, there was a house there at one time, and this huge fire swept over the Black Forest in Colorado and burnt all the houses down. So it was a really sad situation, and ultimately the well wasn't good anymore, and neither was the septic system. But this land, we were getting it for $30,000, and it was probably worth about 60 or 70. So we were getting it at a discount already. So you got to find the land first. Pick a spot. This land had mountain views, beautiful area, and very, very high demand. So the next thing we did was we did a title search. We actually went in under contract. We signed a purchase agreement with the seller and got this purchase agreement over to the title company so they can open it up and dissect it and make sure there was no liens, encumbrances, any issues with the property, and make sure that it would be a clean transfer of title, and they would give us a title insurance policy. So if there were any issues, we would be able to collect on that policy. Basically, it was like an insurance policy, and the title company took care of this for us. So the next thing you want to do is you want to make sure, like, okay, what do the utility situations look like? I mentioned on my example, like this property already had a well, a septic system, and electric, but we were actually gonna have to bring in natural gas for this. Ultimately, I would have rather brought in a propane tank because bringing in the natural gas was a big pain in the butt. It had to be to specific standards. We had to get pressure tests and this, that, and the other. So you want to be familiar with all these things. And ultimately, where I messed up was I was actually acting as the general contractor for this job. So I was in charge of talking to the electric company, in charge of talking to the septic system guy to install a new tank because the one that we had actually melted. The fire was so hot, it melted plastic under the ground. So I had to get a new tank, and I went with an extra bigger tank. But ultimately, what got me in trouble was the gas company. You know, knowing the exact pressures that we needed, pressure test, and this, that, and the other. And ultimately, after the modular home was delivered, we didn't have gas on, so we couldn't turn our heaters on, so we couldn't finish all the inside, modifications that had to be done by actually putting the modular home together. But I'll get into that more. But it ultimately delayed me by months on my project by not having the right general contractor in place. Mistake number one, I should say, is hire a general contractor that's familiar with these modular homes, and I'll tell you how to find one too. Stick around, we'll keep going. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about the due diligence checks and the pieces for this. I do have a free giveaway too. These are the 14 items that me and my team check every time we purchase a piece of land. We purchased over 271 parcels of land in the last 5 years, and we do the same 14 checks on every single one of them. You can get that by going to thelandsharks.com/DD. That's thelandsharks.com/DD. You can also find that link below in the description, but that's my free gift to you today. So let's talk about utilities. Most of the time, what's really important is electric. Is there electric close by? Is there a transformer? What is it going to cost to get the electric to your parcel of land? Luckily, there was already a transformer because there was a house at one time. So we only had a little bit of a run to go. We only had like 50 feet to run. So that wasn't too much. It was under $5,000 to get electric put back on this property. Number two, water. What do we all need? Water. In this case, there was a well already there, but in Colorado, water is a commodity. I mean, same thing within California and Arizona and Nevada and Utah. Water is very important. On the East Coast, it's very abundant, but out in the Midwest or places like Colorado and the very far west like California, do you have well? Are you allowed to drill a well? Do you have a big enough area to drill a well? Or is there water lines nearby that you can extend and tap into? Or is it a community well or community water? You need to know these facts before you pull the trigger and ultimately purchase the property, because you never want to buy a piece of land, for example, like in Pueblo West. There's certain areas of land that's going to take $85,000 to run a water line. Now, ultimately, that's a huge expense. That could be almost the price of what you're paying for the modular home. So just know these before you get into it. Next, septic system. Are you going to use a septic system or are you going to use a sewer line? If the sewer lines are close by, you tap into them. But in Colorado, there's another thing that I learned is you need at least 1 acre to have a septic system. So if you don't have an acre and there's no sewer lines close by, you ultimately have a non-buildable parcel of land. So you don't want to buy a piece of land to build a modular home on it and ultimately not be able to. So you need to know these going forward. And that's part of that due diligence checklist, my 14-item due diligence checklist that I'm giving you as my free gift. So you want to know these things. And the title company does not check this for you. So you need to be aware of these things beforehand, as well as talking to a general contractor before you pull the trigger. And sometimes, you might have to extend the contract with the land seller just to make sure that all these questions are answered. All right, let's go back to the gas. Gas ultimately, like I talked about, I would have rather had to been able to put a propane tank rather than had to do the natural gas. So you just want to be familiar with those two things. And most of the time you could talk to the gas company, the local gas utility provider, a propane providers, and a lot of times they are a wealth of knowledge for free. But once again, going back to that, experienced general contractor that installs and builds these modular homes could also help you walk through this. And then finally, I want to talk about like a percolation test or a soil test. We had to get a soil test to see what type of foundation we were going to need. Can you put a basement foundation for this modular home, or can you just do a conditioned crawl space? All that means is a conditioned crawl space is it's heated and air conditioned. In most of the cases, it was just heated. Our case, I chose a heated conditioned crawl space. I didn't want to have to dig down low and deal with a basement. I just wanted to get in and get out, keep it super simple. And then we poured our foundation. But another mistake number 2 I made was I started my foundation during the dead of winter. So when you're digging through the permafrost, or basically another word for ice, you're digging through this ice, that costs sometimes an extra $1,000 to the excavation company because they have a harder time digging through ice. So once again, another mistake I made. Don't start with your foundation during the dead of winter. Start in the spring or the summer or late fall. All right, now let's talk about survey. Most of the time, sellers are willing to allow you to do a survey before you buy the property. You want to survey and make sure the setbacks are going to allow you to put your modular home where you want to. Ultimately, we forgot about the survey. So luckily, we just fell in by the grace of God. We actually we had 1 foot of buffer, but we had to put our modular home long ways. We would rather have faced the back porch looking at the mountains, but we didn't have enough setbacks on the north and the south, so we couldn't look at the mountains to the west. So we ultimately had to have the modular home going long ways with the property. So the property was 200 feet deep by 95 feet wide, and we had to have 20 foot of setback on each side. So ultimately, we couldn't put it the width wise, we had to put it long ways. We could have probably gotten a higher purchase price if the back porch was facing the mountains. So we worked with what we had, but knowing that ahead of time would have been great. But also, we were lucky we could still put the modular home on. We were able to put it where we wanted to. So a survey is huge. Setbacks are huge. We probably could have gotten a special exemption. However, that would have taken more time, months. That would have taken, and I didn't have the time. I wanted to get this deal done. All right, before I talk about the fun part, getting actually to pick out your modular home and talking to the dealer and picking out all the upgrades, I want you to go ahead and comment on this video if you've ever done one of these before, or any of the setbacks or mistakes you've made. I definitely read all these comments and reply to them, respond to them, but also like this video too. All right, now the fun part. Let's talk about it's like literally walking around the car lot, checking out the modular homes. In my case, I wanted the smallest modular possible. I wanted to get into the beginning buyer, the bigger buyer pool for my modular home buyer. And again, we're talking about buying a piece of land and putting a modular home on it. Maybe you're not looking to sell it. Maybe you're looking to actually live in this modular home. Modulars are great because they have all these upgrades and they're built in a factory. It's a controlled environment, so it's a way better product. And these things are so much better for our environment because they use less energy. They're easier to keep cool during the summer and easier to keep warm during the winter. But this is the fun part. This is going out and picking the upgrades. But I want you to go and visit a minimum minimum of 2 modular home dealers and see what they offer. But here's the very most important step. I talked to you about the couple things the mistakes I've made. This is where I really messed up. I should have asked my modular home provider to give me a recommendation of a few general contractors that installs these things, because this would have made my life so much easier and I would have avoided many of these mistakes. And one thing I didn't even mention, I lived an hour and a half away from where I was building this modular. So once a week I would have to drive a 3-hour round trip to go out there and meet inspectors, meet contractors, this, that, and the other. And it was a huge time suck in my life. So this would have made all the difference. And I asked that modular home dealer that I bought the modular from at the end, I was like, man, I wish I would have asked you for a contractor. And they said, well, we thought you knew what you were doing. They just assumed, and so did I. So that's where we really messed up. All right, so you picked all your upgrades. You chose which modular home provider you wanted to go with. You know, plan on 8 to 12 months for these things to be spun out. When I waited, it was about 7 months. You know, with COVID slowdown and materials and all that, we're looking at like 12 months right now. So that's a long time to wait for a house. But just be prepared, you know, start this in advance. And then also be prepared to pay a 50% deposit up front and have that money sit there for a while. So that's kind of the steps you're gonna have to take, you know, getting this done. But ultimately, you're gonna be happy in the end because this is gonna be a beautiful product. All right, so congratulations, it's been 12 months. Your modular home is ready to go. They're bringing it on site. You know, prepare for the crane to come in. This crane's gotta be able to get up and down these roads, and they're gonna set this modular on the foundation that you've already completed. And hopefully you did your foundation during the spring, the summer, or the fall. You didn't have to deal with winter, but you got to be prepared. Like, hopefully your heat is ready to go to warm this modular if it is about approaching wintertime, because they're going to have to get in there and basically seal this modular together. They're going to marry these two halves and seal it, mud it, paint it, and do the little imperfections, because when this thing goes down the highway at 50 miles an hour, there's gonna be some cracks and some crevices that they're gonna have to fill in. So don't be prepared for that. And there's several walkthroughs. If the company's good, they'll walk through and make sure you're happy. But for the next 6 months, you're gonna see these cracks and eventually it's gonna settle in. But you wanna have the heat on. You want to have the electric on, and be prepared to hook in your water and your septic. So a plumber's gonna have to do that. And ultimately, you're gonna build your decks to code, hopefully, have a general contractor do it, build your decks to code, because I had to rip my decks out because we put in the wrong screws, the wrong brackets, so we started over, and that was like thousands of dollars we flushed down the toilet. The end product is you want to get your final certificate of occupancy. This is where the building inspector, the building department comes out, puts the sticker underneath the sink and says, you are good to go, you can move in. So final mistake I made was you know, those decks. We had to throw away those decks, and then ultimately we had this thing sold before we even got our certificate of occupancy. So we had to delay closing by weeks to get this done. So hopefully I've helped you avoid some of these mistakes that I've made, and you can buy a piece of land, a great piece of land, and build a wonderful modular home. That's my experience with it. I also included a picture in this of my final product of what it looked like. For my situation, we ultimately sold this property before we even finished and made about a $90,000 profit. And I talked to you about my friend that brought me the land. We actually split that profit $45,000 each way. So it was still a good deal, a great learning experience that paid me a lot of money. All right, so once again, the link is below as well to the modular home that I did. As you can see it on Zillow and Realtor.com. Guys, as you know, the real estate market is absolutely exploding. I've got a tried and true method. I teach people how to buy land at massive discounts, or have your friends bring you land deals that are massive discounts, or realtors, or finding land and buying it when it's not even for sale. I teach all those ninja tricks. If you're interested in checking that out, head over to thelandsharks.com. That's thelandsharks.com. The link is below in the description.